I bleached my cardigan. So I'm just going to rip back. I had to do a little extra huh?
I'm Nora, and this is also known as Nora Knits.
Hello there, I'm Nora, and you're watching, also known as Nora Knits. Thank you so much for coming to hang out with me for another podcast episode today. As you can tell if you've been here before, Christmas is gone. And unfortunately, that doesn't mean that I actually finished sewing the Christmas pajamas that I was sort of bribing myself. I was planning to sew up some Christmas pajamas for my boyfriend, myself, and little Miss O.C. And I was telling myself that I was only allowed to take Christmas down once that was done. But the reality is that we just like to take an annual Christmas photo in our matching Christmas pajamas. And so it wasn't as much about getting the pajamas done as it was getting the photo. So we kind of took advantage of the post-Christmas pajama sales and bought some matching PJs this year. And that is what we wore for our photos. So we were able to take those last night and get that done. And then I'm halfway done with this coming Christmas's pajamas. So that's how we're thinking about it. But this is a little bit of an incomplete setup. I have some Valentine's Day decorations that I just haven't gotten around to putting up yet. But I hope that you guys like the new vibe. I do have I made a little bouquet of my pink and red yarns. So we could bring a little color into this, but let me know how you feel about this. In fact, I might even go turn those down a little bit. One second. Okay, perhaps that's better. If not, we'll find out for next time. So yes, thank you for coming to hang out with me today. I have some really exciting things on today's podcast. So let's go ahead and just dive on in. As you can see, I am in fact wearing my complete Coravin cardigan by Tanya Hodney. I think she needs a moment. She needs a moment to be appreciated and celebrated. I will definitely get up and show you a little bit more all-encompassing of the cardigan, but I did finish this in its entirety just the other day. So this is a basket weave textured cardigan. I knit this up on US 7 4.5 millimeter needles, and then I did make a few modifications that I'll get into in a second. But I knit this in Lion Brand Fisherman's Wool in the colorway Oatmeal. In total, this cardigan took 600 grams about of the Lion Brand Fisherman's Wool, which is equivalent to just under 3 full skeins of this yarn. So a really great budget project. In fact, I could tell you how much I spent on it. So I had actually purchased this yarn in a discounted 6-pack of the Lion Brand Fisherman's Wool on Amazon. And I got some savings when I did that. So my personal price for the 3 skeins of yarn that I used is looking about $23.91. So that's for the full 3 skeins that I tapped into for this project. However, if you wanted to knit this cardigan at the same size and with the same yarn without getting that mega discount that I got on it, full price, the yarn would be about $42. However, you could purchase this yarn at places like Joann's. You could also find it on Amazon, but if you shop through somewhere like Joann's, then you can usually use a coupon and get a great deal. I think that it was a wonderful yarn to work with. So I'm very pleased with that. It is 100% wool, so it has a bit of a rustic feel to it. I'm not particularly sensitive, and I think because this is a cardigan, it's going on top of something else most of the time anyway. And then really the only thing that it's fully making contact with is my arms. And it has, you can feel that it's there. It has a little scratch to it, but nothing that bothers me in particular. So when we spoke last, I was still working on the button bands. Obviously, that's finished now. I have to say, I really enjoyed knitting the double knit button bands. I thought it would take me a lot longer than it did. I had only been working on the button band for a couple of days, I think the last time we spoke, and I finished it the next day. Like, I was just powering through this button band. I really liked the process of knitting it. I enjoyed how substantial it was, and it felt so good. It was so satisfying to knit up. So once I made it through the buttonholes, it was pretty smooth sailing just going the rest of the way and then finishing off at the end with an Italian bind off again, the tubular Italian bind off. I had already blocked this once prior to putting the button band in. And when I had done that, my main goal was just blocking out the sort of perimeter of the garment. And so the rest of the sweater really did need a proper blocking and some shaping. So it went through another blocking and that took some time, but I was able to get this full project complete. The knitting was over on day 175, and by the time buttons were on, ends were woven in, and they're all woven in this time. All said and done, this garment took me 182 days to knit. 182 days. This is by far the longest project I've ever had on the needles. It should not take someone that long to knit it. It was simply one of those things that just kept getting pushed to the back of the WIP list. And I'm glad that I wrapped it up because since completing this sweater now, or cardigan, 2 days ago, I've worn it every day since. I'm obsessed with it. I absolutely adore it. The color of this yarn is the perfect gray that in some lighting, it has more of a warmth to it. The fit is impeccable. It's exactly what I wanted. I say that it's impeccable, and I know someone's going to say, impeccable, it's too big on you. That's how I want it. I love the depth of the V-neck that I've got. I've never worn a cardigan with like a t-shirt under it before, but I've seen that in, other people's styling and I've been dying to try it. And I think I need some new t-shirts because I feel like this just looks so chic and sleek and fresh, but cool and cozy and casual. So I love that. The sleeve length is great. I can kind of grab it, but it doesn't get in my way. I'm like all over the place because I'm just excited to tell you everything about this. But let me once again just go over the couple of modifications that I made, and there weren't many. This cardigan is knit from the bottom up, and if you didn't know, this is my second time knitting the cardigan. I think in next week's podcast, I'll wear my first one so I could finally show it to you, and maybe we could just go over a few of those key differences, but I really want this one to have her moment to shine today. So it's knit bottom up. I followed the pattern. Let me double check the size that I was knitting. So I've knit this in the size extra large, and it's knit bottom up. I followed the pattern pretty verbatim. I'll put in my Ravelry exactly how many basket weaves and the schematics of kind of what I've done for mine. But the whole beginning was to pattern, and then I changed up my sleeves where the original pattern has a slight sort of balloon sleeve to them. And I wanted this one to have a little bit more of just a standard taper. It was my first time modifying a sleeve like that. And I started the decreases right around the elbow. And at first I thought that was going to be problematic, but I think after I blocked it, this sort of transition is a lot more smooth than it was before. So I love the fit of it. I think if I were to do it again, I would start the decreases sooner just so that I could have a little bit more of a like graceful taper here. But I do like the way that it fits. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't hinder the garment at all. I then proceeded to knit the ribbing on the cuffs a little bit longer than it recommends in the pattern. And I just knit them to the same length as the ribbing on the hem. And then the biggest modification that I made that I think is also the most dramatic and the most worth it was the double knit button band. This pattern is written to have a ribbed button band, and I followed a few different tutorials. I will put them in the description box below because I found it pretty simple to just make that change, and I really enjoyed that process. It's another thing that when I get to update the Ravelry page, I will put in exactly how many stitches I had put on the double knit button band. But I also went into more detail about that on last week's podcast. So if you want to hear just a little bit more about that, I would just suggest to go check out that video for now. Then I will say I had heard so many people talking about the tutorial from Kimmy, and I'm not, oh my God, Monkholm or something. It starts with an M, Kimmy M, who does petite knits tutorials. Everyone was talking about her way of knitting the buttonholes in a double knit button band without breaking the yarn. And I was looking for that tutorial and apparently found the wrong one. Someone let me know that the tutorial that I followed, where I did still break the yarn, is not the right one. And so if you have the link for the exact tutorial, I guess I didn't know what to even look up. So if you know what it is, maybe just let us know down below, because I will certainly be knitting a double knit button band again, and I would love to check out a way to do it without breaking the yarn for the buttonholes. So I went ahead and I put the buttonholes in, and then the final step, of course, was adding on our antler buttons, which, if you've been here since the antler button story, please put a little deer emoji down in the comments, because you guys are just, you guys make me warm and fuzzy. So thank you. But those are the buttons that I had picked up months ago now, when I had kind of first started knitting this cardigan. And so I have 4 of them. I wanted to show you sort of how I put my buttons in, because I have a pet peeve when it comes to a button band, and the sort of button placket of it all doesn't line up with each other. You know what I mean? When you see it kind of squiggling, that drives me insane. And I know that there's like a lot of things that go into that being an issue, but I would imagine one of them is button size versus buttonhole, and then another is just button placement. So this is only my second time putting buttons into a cardigan, and I've used the same technique both times, and it was just what came to me intuitively, but both times it's worked out. So it could just be a coincidence, or maybe there was something to it. But let me show you what I've done. So actually, what I do is I complete the button band and then I put it on my body. I think it's nice, obviously, to just make sure that your buttonholes are lining up with your button band. But at the end of the day, if it works flat, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work on your body. So I feel like the best thing to do is to just put it on your body and make sure that it's sitting right once it's on. And from there, what I would do is I started at the bottom and then worked my way up, so that I knew that the 2 bottom hems of the button band would line up right. And basically, I would just overlay the buttonhole side onto the side where the buttons were going, and pinch and place the 2 plackets on top of each other in the way that I wanted them to sit once it's on. And then I took a darning needle or a tapestry needle, and I actually reached inside of the buttonhole with the needle and scooped up that stitch so that it was kind of holding it on the outside. So the tapestry needle was almost acting as like a toggle button through the buttonhole, so that I could then kind of slip it around and shift it around and make sure that once I let go, that was going to be a good spot, in fact, for the button. And I took a light bulb stitch marker and put it in there. Then I tried to keep that light bulb stitch marker still coming through the buttonhole, so that it was almost acting as a button, while I then moved down and did the next buttonhole and the next buttonhole and the next buttonhole. At that point, I made sure all of my light bulb stitch markers acting as buttons came through the buttonholes, and so I could push and pull them and make sure that I had them at just the right height. That was really what I was gauging here. At that point, I took the cardigan off and I laid it down, and look to see which column of stitches the stitch markers were lining up with the most, because I wasn't exact every time. And it seems like for me to get the look that I want, where the button plackets are completely covering each other, I actually put my buttons just off center so that they're a touch further from the outside edge of the button band and a little bit closer to the body of the cardigan. Now, I think that this is interesting. It reminds me of a technique in woodworking. And essentially, if you're using dowels in woodworking to secure two pieces of wood overlaying each other in something like a breadboard end, what you will do, I believe it's called draw boring, but you will essentially, instead of drilling a hole for the dowel straight through both of those pieces, I feel like I need a demonstration here. So if I want these two pieces of wood to actually sit together, so if I want these two pieces of wood to intersect at, there's a process in building a breadboard end table. So that's a table that has the wood all going lengthwise and then a piece of wood going widthwise, sort of capping onto the end of it. You essentially have to have a point that's overlapping. And so that's done with like a tongue and groove joint, basically. And then from there, you need to secure a pin through it to make the most secure connection. So you use a dowel. And it would seem obvious at that point where they're intersecting to drill a hole straight through both pieces so that when they're inserted into each other, the pin is just holding them together. But what you actually want to do is slightly offset those holes so that they are drawing into one another. So rather than one dowel going through two holes straight, leaving a possible gap between two pieces of wood, you actually kind of put the hole for this one a little closer to the edge and then the hole for this one a little closer to the edge. So then when you mash that dowel into there, it's actually pulling both of those pieces of wood together to make the most seamless joint possible. And so it made sense to me that if my buttons are just off center, it will kind of pull my button hole slightly over to avoid that sort of waviness that's happening. If I lost you, I apologize. I don't think that I could explain this as well as I could visualize this. And if you've never built a breadboard end table before, then this is probably just useless information to you. But I love looking at different ways that other areas of crafting and hobbies or just things that you do in life can sort of help influence the way that you do things in knitting. And so this was just a fun one for me. But yeah, essentially, I've just placed my buttons a little closer to the body of the cardigan than to the edge so that when I button it entirely, the whole button placket is kind of pulled over, and therefore I don't get that gapping. I don't get the waviness. I don't see the actual placket that the buttons are on when the cardigan's closed, because those are all just pet peeves of mine. Whatever I did, I really like the way that it turned out. I think it's working out very well. The yarn that I knit the sweater in or the cardigan in, and it's a 4-ply yarn. So I actually just tore apart so that I had 2 plies for sewing in the buttons. And I wanted to make sure that the back side of this was seamless and didn't have any yarn coming through. So I just sewed the button onto the top layer of the double knit button band. And I don't do anything special. I simply catch the button and a stitch behind it, do that a couple of times, wrap it around the back of the button, and then I just weaved in my ends through the button band. So they're kind of still living in there, but it's working out. Anyway, I think it looks fantastic. I feel like I did a terrible job of explaining that. If you have questions, I'll try to answer them in the comments. So anyway, that is how I finished this cardigan. If you're someone who has struggled with placing your buttons in the past, maybe give that a shot. I've done that the 2 times I've put buttons on, and I think that both of my button bands actually look pretty consistent. And so, yeah, I worry a little bit less about the measurements between each button. I fussed around with that for the buttonholes. So realistically, if I then line up the buttonholes with the button placket, I should be able to put those buttons in exactly the right place that they need to be. And like I said, if they're not perfect, at least they go perfectly through their hole. So works for me. Now, I have a funny and sort of terrifying story for you. I had this blocking for a few days. It was just taking forever for this to dry. It's cold here. I've got one room where the blocking happens. It's a small room and it just hangs out there until it's dry. And we recently got a new mirror. If you saw my how I style my knitwear video, then you might have seen my mirror in our bedroom that we got recently, and it was replacing a smaller floor length mirror. So that's kind of just been in the extra room since until we get rid of it. And so that's basically leaning up against the wall right behind where the blocking mats are. And then across the room, there's a window. So I actually went in there. It was pretty late at night. And I was like, all right, last thing I want to do today is get this off the blocking mats and get my buttons on. And I went to go take the sweater off of the blocking mats. Now, I hadn't looked at it in a couple of days other than just glancing at it when I walked by, but I would kind of touch it. It was a little damp. I just figured I'll leave it. So I went in there to go take it off the blocking mats. Oh, I just got yarn on my face. And I'm looking at it and I saw, and I'll put a picture because I took a picture. Half of the cardigan looked like it was bleached. They say don't put your knits outside to block in direct sunlight because it can discolor the yarn. And I was looking at the cardigan and literally the whole half of it was white. And I was like, oh my gosh. The sun must have come through the window, reflected off of the mirror, hit the cardigan, and it's been here for like 4 or 5 days. Doing that day after day, I bleached my cardigan. And my boyfriend was in the next room, and I was like, I need you to come look at this. I'm about to have a mental breakdown. It's like, I'm about to start crying profusely because this cardigan has taken too much time, and this color was exactly why I wanted to knit it, that I bleached it. And if you see this photo, you're like, holy cow, what happened? So I was like, okay, relax. It can't be that bad. It might just be the lighting in here, but we're looking at it. I was like, oh my gosh, I completely screwed this up. What the heck did I do? So I take all of the pins out. And the first thing that I did was just kind of pull the cardigan over to the side. And as I did that, I saw that what I thought was just bleaching it was actually just the light reflecting off of the mirror. So it was just like a weird shadow and then light thing that was happening, but I don't know even how to like translate the fact that this was a stressful moment. I really thought, because it made so much sense to me. It was like the light, it came through, bounced off the mirror, hit the cardigan, bleached it. It's been here for days. I didn't even notice. I didn't even think of that. We only just put the mirror in there recently. So I hadn't blocked something else that this would have happened to before. I was, oh my gosh, I was freaking out. But then, yeah, I moved the cardigan and it wasn't. And I was so relieved. But it made me think like that could happen. So be careful when you're blocking that maybe it's not in direct sunlight and that you don't have a mirror like shining the light right on it. Oh my gosh, the panic. I was so freaked out. But everything was good. Like I said, I've now worn this every day since I finished it, and I'm just excited to keep wearing it. I do love the finished product. Speaking actually of the color, I had mentioned in a previous episode that I figured because I purchased 6 skeins of this yarn and I had 3 left over now after this project, 3 and some. I thought I could make a bigger project with the remaining yarn by just purchasing some supplementing yarn because it is Lion brand and it's a mass-produced yarn, so I didn't think there would be too much variation in the colorway. But then one of the last times I was in a Joann's, I saw their colorway oatmeal and it looked really beige to me. So I actually went out in this to Joann's yesterday and I took a little clip and the yarn that they had there seemed to match it pretty well. I do think it was not a perfect match, and that's of course to be expected. They're not the same dye lot, but I think it was a close enough match that if I did want to use the rest of the 3 skeins that I have and add in some more to make a bigger project, then I definitely could do that as long as I just am careful about it. But so that's not as much of a concern of mine anymore. I just wanted to make sure I cleared that up because I had mentioned that before. And there might be even more inconsistency than I know about just because I do feel like that one time I saw it, I mean, it was straight up like a beige. So who knows? But I'm excited because I do think that I'll be able to supplement with a little extra yarn if I need to. But other than that, I think that we should give this cardigan a proper send off and reminisce about all of the wonderful times that we have had with Miss Coravin cardigan over the past 182 days. So my next whip is what I have been pronouncing as the Coravin cardigan by Tanya Hodney, something like that. I don't know who I think I am that I went into any store and was like, here's the card, charge it, baby. In the receipt, it says that I bought 4 antler buttons. So I guess that's kind of exciting for me. I don't know whose antler it is. Who do you belong to, little button? Look at that. It smells sheepy. I love the sheepy scent. So I think that once this is done, it's going to be so amazing to have in my wardrobe. It's the one that's been on the needles the longest, and that is my Coravin cardigan. My Coravin cardigan. The Coravin cardigan. The Coravin. We are on day 97 of the Coravin. It's going to be such a staple piece in my wardrobe that I don't feel the need to meet a deadline with it, but I also don't want it to fall to the wayside because I want it. I love it. I want it. But that is my Coravin cardigan by Tanya Hodney, the width that has been on my needles the longest, and that is my Coravin cardigan. I decided that I would also modify the shape of the sleeves on this cardigan. After a little bit of math, I made some choices about how I was going to decrease. So I had to kind of divide the amount of decreases. I was doing all this while I was watching the Thanksgiving Day parade. So then I had to rip back Coravin cardigan. I said I would talk about my Coravin cardigan here. Let me go ahead and start out by saying that the Coravin cardigan that I was hoping to have started the double knit button band on by today is currently blocking. Oh my gosh! This is my first time trying it on. That looks so cool. So the next thing that I want to talk about is Dad's sweater. This is the Learn to Knit a Men's Sweater pattern by Stacey Perry. And it's not 100% done yet, but I want to just give you the post blocking update today because it is blocked. I have yet to weave in ends and sew in the zipper. It took a lot longer to block than I thought it was going to. And then when I was looking at the pattern, Stacey Perry suggests that you use a specific tool to get the best zipper installation. And since I had just inserted my first zipper with my Boulevard bag by Lily Kate France, I felt like I could use a better way of putting in a zipper. And so I decided to go ahead and order the tool, and I will include that process in next week's podcast because I've only just started and I just didn't have time to get it all done today. So my dad's birthday, as I'm filming, was actually just a couple days ago, and I did go spend the day with him, but my family is doing a small celebration at my parents' house this coming weekend. And so I figure I'll just bring it with me to that event to gift it to him. So then hopefully next week I will be able to tell you how it fit and all of that. But let me go ahead and throw it on so that you can see the post blocking update. Okay. So I have it on right now. I have ends galore. Once the zipper is in, I do still have to fold down this collar, and this will have a zipper, obviously. So there's a lot still kind of going on for right now. I'm almost just going to hold it like a little sailor collar. But I knit this sweater for my dad using Cascade Yarns 220 Superwash worsted in the colorway Jet. And I used pretty much exactly 6 balls of yarn for this project. I knit this for my dad somewhere in between the sizes large and extra large by just extending the raglan detail a little bit more. And my dad and I are about the same size. If anything, I think he might just be a tiny bit smaller than I am. And obviously, our proportions are different. So, the way that this is fitting me right now is about how it's going to fit him, but it's obviously going to sit different. So, it's so hard to tell with these things. But I feel like I got the fit pretty good. I blocked this. It took forever to dry, but I tried not to stretch it too much because everyone says that superwash yarn is something that grows a ton in blocking. So I was afraid of it growing too much because I didn't want it to be huge on him. I really want him to be able to wear this with just a shirt underneath. And I almost feel like I could have blocked it like a little bit more than I did, but I can always block this again if that seems like the difference between it fitting him a little too snug and just right. As of right now, I feel like I nailed it, but I don't want to speak too soon because I have to get it to him still. And yes, the only thing that this is missing right now is the zipper and obviously the ends being woven in. The modification that I made to this, other than knitting it in between those two sizes, was that typically the cast on edge is actually what is the top of the collar. But because I wanted my dad to have a little bit more of like a rigid collar, and I just felt like I was never going to get a really tidy cast on edge, I just went ahead and knit it double the length so you could see this is the halfway point where I have this stitch marker, and that's where it will be folded and sewn down. And hopefully that whole process and the zipper installation goes according to plan, because now we're really down to the wire, which is just so me. Like I got it done way early and then left all these finishing touches for the days before, but that is okay. It'll still be done on time. And yeah, very comfortable. This is not the merino superwash version of Cascade, but rather the standard wool. And it's softer than the Coravin is, which makes sense because it is superwash, that it has that more smooth sort of feeling to it. But at the moment, I'm really thrilled with how it looks, and hopefully the rest of this goes as smoothly as this did. Now, the other thing is I had purchased 8 balls of this yarn, and so I have 2 left right now. I am hoping to, once I get this to my dad, if it fits him just right, I think I'm going to return the last 2 balls, because I am still within the return window, and then I could put that towards another project. And otherwise, at least I have them if I need to. So yeah, so far so good on this. I know I'm like, this is now fallen off the fallen to the wayside too. But I just got so excited about the Core 7 that I didn't need this done right now. So I will be gifting this to my dad this coming weekend, and I will include the finished footage of it in next week's podcast, and I will tell you more about the zipper installation once I've done it. I haven't done it yet. What I can say right now is that this was a fantastic pattern. If you are looking to knit something like a zipper sweater for a guy, then I think this is a great place to start. I also think if I have this on right now, and I would personally not wear it in this size. I would probably knit it a couple sizes up, but I think it has a really classy look about it. I enjoy the long spans of the ribbing across the whole body, and then all of the 2x2 finishes that was the other modification that I made, was that the original pattern has I-cord edges, and I just matched the 2x2 ribbing that you see in the collar on the hem and on the sleeves. I used the Andrea Mowry tutorial to rearrange the stitches from the 2x2 and do a tubular Italian bind off on this. So I really hope my dad loves it. I think it looks really good. And I think the only concern I have right now with the fit is that it might be a touch short, but if it needs to be lengthened, I have the yarn to do it, so I don't mind. And I would probably just wind up cutting off the bind off and ripping back. I know that I could do a little sweater surgery, but it would really just be the ribbing that I'd be redoing. So I would not mind doing that at all. Anyway, I hope that he likes it. And like I said, I'll include that footage in next week's podcast. As of right now, this project is on day 34. So that's the Learn to Knit a Men's Sweater pattern by Stacey Perry, and I'll have more to tell you about it next week. It's a little chilly in this right now, but I figure I'll actually try on my second and final. It's really my only whip. The my dad's sweater just needs a zipper, so it doesn't feel like a whip, but I'm considering it one. But the actual only thing that I'm knitting right now is my Seclen sweater by Cecilia Garcia Rodrigo. And this is a top-down raglan V-neck, oversized, kind of boxy, split hem sweater that I'm knitting out of Karen Blossom's Cakes in the colorway Cabana. And this has now been on my needles for 15 days, and I've made some serious progress. I am knitting this in the size 6. And let me show you where we're at, because I have made some progress since we spoke last. So since we last spoke, I actually have knit. Where is it? There she is. So when we spoke last week, this did not have a neckband. It did not have sleeves. I was right here where my Black Pearl Magic little gummy bear stitch marker is. I knit down the body. I have since split for the front and back hem because it's a split hem. I have knit one sleeve down to the point where it needs its cuff. And I have added the 2x2 ribbing on the V-neck line, and I've done an Italian tubular bind off on that. Also using the rearranging stitches method from Andrea Mowry's tutorial. Now, currently, she's at a little bit of a standstill because I was at the point where it was time to split the hem and start working the front or back. I'm starting with the back panel while we were watching soccer. And I just like quickly looked at the instructions, but was then just trying to get on with it so that I could keep watching the game. And so naturally, I made a mistake. I actually wound up, they have you have a sort of salvage edge. And I was totally not paying attention at all. I was supposed to like decrease a couple stitches and then slipping the first stitch and knitting the last or something. I don't know. I just started like slipping all of the edge stitches. I never did the decreases, and so I totally screwed that up. The good thing is that I'm only about 5 rows into that ribbing, so I'm just gonna rip back and do what I was supposed to do all along so that that is looking right, but I actually haven't tried this on yet. So I figured we could do that now, so that's why I just left it on my t-shirt. And I also think I will just go ahead at this time and move this little progress keeper. I think we should just move it to the hem, although I think things are going to get a little bit more obvious now as I am working because all I have left to do, sorry, I'm doing this while I'm talking. All I have left to do is the other sleeve and then the front and back hem and the cuffs. So I like to actually do this anytime I'm knitting a sweater. I will knit the sleeves and not do the cuffs until I've tried everything on and I know I'm ready for cuffs on everything. And that way I can make sure that I, just get everything the way that I want it to be proportionately, especially because it's a pattern that says to knit for X amount of centimeters until you start the cuffs. So I just want to make sure I'm in the right place. Otherwise, I have followed the pattern in its entirety for this one. I also mentioned last week when I just started this that this pattern is written originally in Spanish and translated to English. There are no other projects on Ravelry at the moment. And so I'm pioneering this mission, and I did find quite a few now mistakes in mostly in the translation of the pattern, and then a couple little minor things. I reached out to the designer and she actually just got back to me today. So I'm glad she got back to me. She's receptive to what I've said. And so hopefully if someone else chooses to knit this pattern, then they won't run into the same little issues that I have. It's no big deal, but it mostly affected my size. And so I wouldn't be concerned. I would say if you've never knit a sweater before, I wouldn't start here, though it has a basic look to it just because of the way that the pattern's written and those few little errors. I think you might run into some issues. However, I feel like if you've knit a raglan sweater before, you would be completely fine to knit this pattern. And I would just say to keep your guard up a little bit while you're going and make sure that you're using your intuition to find out what's going on. It's not that difficult at all. I had to do a little extra like, huh? while I was going to make sure that I was doing what was right. In the end, I think it's fine. I haven't tried it on yet, so let's try it on. Jeez, I'm chatty today. So right now I have my needles on the back hem and I just have some tubing on the front hem. And yeah, let's just do this. I just have to undo this try it on tubing so that I can actually get my arm through there. So far the yarn I really like. It's super soft. I've knit with it once before, but that was not for me. So I don't know how it's going to wear, but the yarn is really soft right now. And I actually pretty much just finished up the second ball of this yarn. So I'm hoping that the third and final one that I have will be enough, and it should be. Oh, I will say I'll tell you in a second. Woo-wee, how nice is that, huh? Just a simple raglan sweater. Perfect. It's perfect. Hey, y'all. Look at that. I actually did picture kind of styling this with a t-shirt underneath, but I also was nervous that this v-neck would be too low for me, and I think it's going to be completely fine. So yeah, I could wear it also without one. Nice and oversized. I mean, it's real big. This is what I wanted though. I actually measured a sweater that I own and I was trying to match that. I love how it has the 2x2 ribbing continuing all the way down the sides of the sweater. It also continues under the arm, even through the decreasing. And then it's going to have a nice chunky split hem that will also have that 2x2 ribbing. I think this is fantastic, you guys. I wanted just like a throw on sweater, something to keep in the car, something just to have when I'm getting a little chilly on like a summer evening. I have yet to weave in these ends. So sorry. Let's tuck those in. I also am like casually keeping my little pearl stitch stoppers on the try it on tubing because they roll away when I put them on a table. So that's where we're at. Man, this looks good. I love it. I do think that this sleeve is ready for the cuff. So that's great because that'll give me a few extra inches. I'll double check just how long the cuff is supposed to be. But I think that we're just about there. And yeah, what was I going to say? Oh, I was going to say this yarn is a chainette style. It's a cotton chainette with then acrylic blown into it. And the one thing was that when I had done the sewn bind off on this V-neck edge, I think I just kind of caught the chain a few times. And so it was like all kind of cinched up when I did it. And so I just went to like give it a tug and I heard this like snap, crackle, pop all over the place. And I think it's going to be fine, but it wasn't the easiest thing to do a sewn bind off with just because you could catch those little parts of the chain, but nothing too dramatic. I think that this is going to be a great piece for my wardrobe. The one thing with this yarn is that I do hope after I wash it that it kind of settles a little bit because it's a little stiff at the moment. So I'm hoping that like when I finish it, it will, as I sort of wash and wear it, it'll almost get that like worn out t-shirt look and feel. Like I'm okay with it sort of losing its fluff. And I expect that to happen. So I'm hoping that'll be the case. But I think so far so good with this. I'm so pleased with the fit. And I think once all of this ribbing kind of blocks out a little bit, it's just going to be a great easy peasy sweater. Yay. See, this is why I like to wait to try my things on. Obviously, this could go wrong that I waited until this point to try on this sweater, but I just wanted to wait and see. I get excited when I'm getting towards the end now and it's like working out just how I thought it would. So, yay. Wow, I love it. I love the colors of it too. I think on camera it reads a little bit more green than it really is in person. It's quite a salmon-y pink. It's like a raw chicken pink. And then has these bits of sand and they might have the slightest bit of a green undertone, but I think on camera it picks up a little bit more green than it is. So this is my Seclen sweater by Cecilia Garcia Rodrigo, Karen Blossom Cakes Cabana. I think it's great. I love it. I really do. I really love it. I'm hoping that they can just make those few changes in the errors of the pattern, and then I'll be very happy to be the first person with my finished object photo on Ravelry because I think that for such a nice basic that has all the right details that makes it a little more special. So I actually I'm loving the fit of this, and that is redeeming all of the little question marks I had while I was knitting it. So, Seclen, we are on day 15. And who knows, maybe by the next time we chat, it'll be done. I think it could be, right? A sleeve once I get this pulled out. Let me get my Coravin back on. Yeah, I feel like the Seclen sweater, I'm really hoping that it's going to sort of work in place of like a just pullover sweatshirt. Like a crew neck sweatshirt. I'm hoping that it'll kind of take the place of that. on just a comfy, cozy day when we want to go for a hike or something. Between the yarn being so washable and easy to maintain, with the acrylic and cotton blends, and then just the oversized and basicness of it all, I really hope that that's the void that is going to fill in my wardrobe. And I think so far, so good. But I am happy to have this guy back on. It's nice and cozy. So that's where we're at, guys. I hate these episodes where everything's so all over the place, but that's just the reality of how it goes, right? So, in the next few days, the goal is to get dad's zipper on and get it to him. Oh my gosh, I'm nervous. Um, I think he's gonna like it, but I'm just nervous it's not gonna fit quite right. And I know that if it doesn't, he's gonna feel like, no, honey, it's fine. And I'm gonna be like, Dad, let me take the sweater back and fix it for you. So hopefully that works out. And then, yeah, I'm excited to take a trip back to Webb's to return the ball or two if I have them left over so I could put it towards a new project. And once dad's sweater is out of the house, I will hopefully be casting on a project that will be my texture and sort of focused knitting project, while the Seclen takes the backseat of being the stockinette and more mindless knitting project. So those are sort of the tentative plans. I will have less time between now and my next filming of my podcast, just the way that things worked out this week, but we'll see what kind of progress has been made. And yeah, I also I just random, I had stopped into my family and I went to go see Chicago on Broadway this past week, and it happened to line up with the timing that Vogue Knitting Live was taking place in New York City. So we didn't have much time, but I did make it a point to get to Nitty City that I had heard so much about, because that was pretty much just close enough and as much time as we had while we were in the area. And I didn't get anything while I was there. I didn't give myself quite enough time. And I just sort of thought, like, if something speaks to me, I'll get it. And I was too overwhelmed. It was a great little shop. The people were so nice. I met Lynn and her friend Sally, viewers of the channel. So nice to meet you, ladies. I hope you had a great time at Vogue Knitting Live, as with anyone else who was able to go. And maybe next year I will try to make it. It wasn't even on my radar, and then I thought I could, and then I couldn't. And anyway, rambling. So yeah, that was what happened this past week. I wound up then kind of pushing the filming of this podcast, which is why I think I made so much progress on all of the projects. But I also really wanted to make sure that this guy was done by the time I filmed. So that being said, if you want to see how I'm wearing this knit as well as my others, I highly recommend that you go follow me over on Instagram at aka Nora Knits. I have been making it a point to share in my Instagram stories whenever I'm wearing my knitwear, and then also posting all of those to a highlight on my Instagram so that you can maybe get a little inspiration or just see someone who's really actually wearing their knits. That's my goal. So the hashtag that I've been using in the stories is hashtag is hashtag KFOTD, and that stands for Knit Fit of the Day. And I really do encourage you to share and use that hashtag as well. You could tag me, use that hashtag, and we can kind of see how we're all wearing our knitwear. And otherwise, the only other news is, if you haven't seen it already, I did put up another video this past week that I'm incredibly proud of and I thoroughly enjoyed making. And that was my fiber fashion forecast, where I was predicting the knitting trends for 2024. So I highly recommend that you go check that out if you are looking for a little inspiration, or if you're looking for a new way to think about inspiration. I just really enjoyed making that video, and the response has been so lovely. Those of you who have seen it have just been leaving like the nicest comments I've ever seen, and I really do appreciate them, especially on videos like that do take a little bit extra effort. So thank you so much for those of you who have watched it. Definitely tell a friend if you enjoyed it, because I think it's just it's a good one. I do say so myself. Anyway, if you enjoy videos like this one and knitting content in general, then I definitely suggest you stick around and hang out with us more often. I post my podcasts every Saturday morning at 9:30 a.m. And it would just mean the world to me if you would come hang out with us again. So all of that being said, please feel free to go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. You could subscribe, ring the bell so that you're notified when those secondary videos do go up. All of those things that YouTube really does like. And with that being said, big ol' thanks for watching. I'll catch you on the next one. All right, you guys. Bye.